Let's do it.
Welcome to TFA, Tanis Fiber Arts podcast.
The inaugural episode, the first one.
Episode 1. I'm Tanis.
And I'm Chris, Tanis' husband. We're both representing Tanis Fiber Arts.
Yeah, and we decided to do a podcast just as another way to sort of interact with the knitting community and to share what we're working on and what we've done. And it's just the video aspect is just so fun because knitting is so visual and colorful, and it just seems like a really fun experiment. It might go nowhere, but it might
let everybody know who's behind the yarn you guys are using.
Yeah. So I'm wearing my Christmas in July sweater.
It's a classic family favorite. Both our boys have them. Tan wears one. They're
love it.
Yeah,
we love it. And so I put it out there last week on social media that we wanted to do a podcast and wanted to know what you guys wanted to hear about from us, what our podcast should be about. And basically, turns out everybody wants to know
pretty much everything.
Everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, from the ins and outs of running a small business from home with the kids, how we got started,
how we come up with different colorways,
how I became more involved in design, what each of us do. So basically, so much, way too much to cover in one podcast. So we're going to kind of break it up, which is awesome because since we have no idea what we're doing, at least now we have a couple podcasts worth of material to focus on. And today we're going to just start with our story, with the beginning, how we started TFA and how we got to where we are now and what that looks like.
Which a bunch of people asked, so it's sticking to the script.
I think so.
Yeah.
It seems like something people are hopefully interested in. So there you go. So TFA, I started experimenting with Kool-Aid and yarn dyeing in about 2007 after I had graduated from university with a degree in fine arts and no idea what I was going to do. That sort of in-between time when I was trying to figure out my career path, my life, I got really, really into knitting. It was sort of, I guess, like a way for me to focus. With a degree in fine arts, there's like zero career direction, really, right? Like, it's not like I graduated with a degree in accounting and I'm going to be an accountant. I just had all this very general knowledge and I could do with it whatever I want. And so I thought that I was probably going to end up with a career in the arts, but not necessarily that I was going to be an artist. I guess I thought I was going to maybe work at an art gallery or do something like that. And but still, trying to find a job straight out of university is incredibly daunting. So I had a lot of time on my hands to knit, and I did just that.
Yeah, the way I remember it, we had just got our first apartment together and had left the restaurant where we both met.
Yeah.
I was cooking at another restaurant and Tan was taking a little bit of time to figure out where she was going. And pretty telling, that time was spent, the bulk of it, just knitting.
Yeah.
So that was a really good indicator of where things were going to go, I think, looking back on it.
Yeah, my dad would be like, "Did you apply to any jobs today?" And I'd be like, "I knit a mitten."
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I clearly wanted to be doing with my time. So
right, yeah.
It worked out. But, so in the end, I ended up just getting I did not find a position within my field. And so I just went back to work as a waitress at a restaurant, and in my free time, all of my spare time, I was knitting and loving using hand-dyed yarns, and realized, oh my gosh, this is a thing that people do. People like dye yarns as a job, and still not really thinking it was going to be my job, but just something that I wanted to do to experiment with because it seemed just like so much fun. I started experimenting dyeing yarn, and then I was dyeing so much yarn, like way more than I could conceivably knit with myself, that sort of just for practical reasons I decided to open an Etsy shop and see if I could sell any of it. Not really because I felt like the world needs to see my yarn, but more because I was like, I can't keep all this yarn.
Right. So let's backtrack a little bit. We were living in a really small apartment, and at one point Tan made the decision to go ahead and order herself a box of yarn, which we spoke about a little bit over dinner before she did it, and I was super supportive and masked any kind of fear I had about a giant box of yarn that we were going to travel with for the rest of our lives that would remain mostly undyed. How big was the box of yarn?
It was 100 pounds. of yarn, and it seemed like at the time like the practical thing to do, because buying it in just like individual skeins just isn't really like economical.
Yeah.
Because you pay more for it. So I was like, I'm just going to save so much money and buy 100 pounds of yarn at once with like absolutely no experience in selling yarn or having done. But you have to try at one point.
Sure. In retrospect, it's not that crazy a move, but just I remember at the time
it was a big box.
That
it took
up a quarter of our living room, and
yeah.
I was just thinking, oh, I'm really glad she's going for it, but this could be here forever. We could be moving this box from apartment to apartment, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, so
that's not how it happened.
By January 2008 is the date that I really think of as like that when Tanis Fiber Arts really started, because that's when I set up an Etsy shop and I sold my first yarn. And actually I was looking at it. Do you know what the first colorway we sold?
I remember there being, is it a colorway we still do?
Yeah.
Royal Flush.
No, Shadow.
No? Shadow?
Yeah, Shadow, the gray with some blue. Anyways, it's kind of cute. So I sold it's probably looks a little bit different now, but not that different. It's like a light gray with hits of blues. It's a good one.
There's a lot of colorways we've had from the beginning that are still really good sellers that just always have had their place in the lineup of colors that we do.
So January 2008, I started the Etsy shop, still super, super small, still dying from the kitchen. Like, we didn't have drying racks in that apartment. I would just string the skeins of yarn
over
on
a
doorknobs.
dowel or a broomstick, and hang them. They were kind of like our version of a beaded curtain for the first apartment.
Just like skeins of yarn.
Any room you wanted to get into, you had to part the wet skeins of yarn. So
it sounds cool, like yarn, but it was like soaking wet.
Mostly dripping. So.
It really, not cute. But from there, the Etsy shop, things were selling, and I couldn't believe it. And which is why Etsy is so amazing, because I think if it was just a website, nobody would have found me. But on Etsy, people were able to find me because they're searching for yarn on Etsy, and there I was. And
each one was a little victory too. That was like the story of the day when there was a yarn sale. It just seemed so amazing to us that you can make something in your apartment and it would be interesting to other people and something they wanted. And every little sale was, I'd come home from cooking and Tan would tell me about what sold that day, and it was super exciting right off the bat for both of us.
Yeah. And then from there, about just over a year after I started very tentatively and just with the Etsy shop, it became clear that if I wanted to do more, if I wanted to grow at all, if I wanted to... Oh, at this point also I should mention that we had I'd been approached by a couple yarn shops who wanted to carry my yarn because I was Canadian and I was... I think the Canadian thing was a big one, because there were Canadian yarn shops that were contacting me because people would come in to their shop and want to buy something made in Canada. And so I guess at the time, maybe there were for sure, I mean, I think Sweet Georgia was around, Fleece Artist was around, so there were Canadian hand dyers, but not as many as there are now, and it was a bit of a niche, a cool thing, and so...
We got very lucky with the time.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. And so I got into a couple local yarn shops, and then that's when it sort of became very time-consuming, because obviously the orders were significantly larger than just putting a couple skeins up on Etsy, and that's when I had to make the decision to, do I quit my job at the restaurant and pursue this full-time? And it's a bit of a risky decision because obviously when I quit my job at the restaurant, which was April of 2009, so just a little bit over a year after I opened the Etsy shop, I was not making enough money from Tanis Fiber Arts to validate quitting the job. Like I wasn't making as much as I was at the restaurant. I was definitely still depending on that salary, but I couldn't make the money that I needed to make only doing it part-time. In order to make a full-time sort of income, I needed to devote full-time energy to it. So, well, I say it was a risk, but it wasn't.
People ask all the time about that, how did you make that first leap? But we were in a small apartment, no kids, we didn't even have Stella yet.
Rent wasn't high.
And working in the restaurant industry in a city like Montreal, which is kind of a food place, the jobs aren't that hard to come by, so it was a risk, but not a monumental one.
If it didn't work out, I could go back to a restaurant job. It's not like I was leaving a lucrative career and I was taking this big risk by quitting it. So so I quit and I started working full time on TFA, and that was awesome. I remember I went to my first Knitters Frolic. It was so exciting.
Things rolled really quickly from there.
Yeah, I think it makes a really big difference. Like, you can only get out what you put in, and so the fact that I had full-time energy to put towards it, we were seeing that come back. You know, that was amazing. And so then pretty quickly after that, that was in April, and by October I had convinced Chris that he should join me because I needed help.
Yeah, it was an easy sell. I'd been cooking for about 10 years, and the prospect of another couple years of breaking down the line and cleaning a kitchen at 1 in the morning on a Saturday was looking less appealing every week. And so, I went in full force too.
Yeah, so again, it was that same type of a situation where, and people say, oh, was it a big risk? Chris quit his job. No, because the way we were looking at it, if Chris didn't quit his job to come help me, either I couldn't do all that people were asking of me. I couldn't meet the demand. So we knew that there was demand there because I was already falling behind on it on my own. And I couldn't I needed help, but I couldn't really hire an employee to come into the apartment situation that we were in. My work situation wasn't professional enough to really hire somebody, and I also wasn't. So I would have had to rent a studio, pay for staff. That just seemed like such a big risk. That I wasn't. It was so much more of a financial investment than I was comfortable with.
Right.
But Chris coming on and just being able to help with the day-to-day stuff, that seemed somehow way more feasible, and thank God it really worked out.
Yeah. So my initial task was the first thing I had to do was set up the initial version of the website, and other than that, it was scanning mini skeins for kids all day long in the bedroom. Yeah. So 10 was
the
working
bedroom.
on.
Yeah. So our apartment, like we keep saying, that by now it was not the same apartment, but still it was a downtown apartment. It's not like we had a studio space. We had the kitchen where we would dye the yarn. We had the bedroom where we had a little IKEA table and the skein winder set up. So literally we would wind
That's our bedroom, and the guest bedroom was
it was a two-bedroom
storage racks and the
second
computer, so the office and storage.
But it overflowed, definitely.
Thinking now, that really only, with the drying racks in the living room, that only left the bathroom that didn't have anything to do with yarn dyeing.
Yeah, because we thought we had plenty of room in the second bedroom to store the boxes of yarn, but we had all, like, our giant boxes of undyed yarn were just behind the sofa.
Right.
Yeah, so it was just crazy. It was intense. But we, so Chris was making mini skeins and working on the website. And the reason I'm going to try and interject, not just story how TFA grew, but sort of why we made some of the decisions that we made, in case people might find that interesting. So we were on Etsy, doing well there. It was working, but there are some limitations when you're selling hand dyed yarn on Etsy. For me, one of them was it made it kind of difficult for people to purchase sweater quantities of yarn. I always had to have 10 of everything available. And so by this point, we had Blue Label, we had sock yarn, a DK weight, a worsted weight, a lace weight, and probably let's say 50 different colors. So right there, that's already 200 listings, because there's 50 colors, 4 different bases, and each one is a separate listing on Etsy. And at the time, I don't know, now Etsy's advanced a little bit more. You can add variations, and there's a drop-down menu, and there's probably a way to work it out, but back then there wasn't really. So each listing had to be done separately, and to have a sweater quantity, you had to list the whole sweater quantity, and you had to pay for every listing, even if they didn't sell. So that's 200 lists. Anyways, it was just becoming very complicated. Or if somebody wanted a sweater quantity that wasn't available, they would have to email me, and then I would set up a listing for them. It was just not super practical for the type of service that I wanted to provide. So I wanted a website where we would dye to order. So no matter what you ordered, we would dye it for you. If you wanted 12 of a color, you could order it. Whereas on Etsy, I never would have had 12 of one thing listed. So anyhow, so that's why we went for the website. And then also we could organize how things were displayed better, because Etsy limits that as well. Definitely wanted everything in rainbow formation.
Yeah.
You could really do that. I was like, I need to have a website because I need more rainbows.
Yeah.
So Chris did that. He has a little bit of an experience in graphic design and web work, so he was super integral in that.
Even at that, it was mostly sitting in front of the computer with
a book.
Internet for Dummies book.
Yeah, but it worked. So we had a website that went up, and that worked. And then the next step from there, our apartment was clearly getting too small. Like it was
right. So the bulk of the physical dyeing was done in the kitchen, which meant that every day was a race to get what needed to be done to fill the orders. And then to get everything out of the kitchen so we could eat.
Yeah.
So we could have dinner.
Yeah.
And I remember there was always at least 2 or 3 racks in the living room space. And then 6 months out of the year, on our small deck, we would have as many racks as possible to get the cross breeze and to dry it fast.
The balcony.
The balcony of the apartment.
You could fit 2 racks. It wasn't like a deck.
Yeah, so you were in the yarn in that apartment.
Yeah.
It was really on top of you, and we were both looking forward to
just having some
finding a place where we could maybe keep the living and the yarn a little bit separate.
Yeah, so then we did. So that was October 2009 when Chris came on full-time with the business, and then by May of 2010, we were getting married. We got married in June, and we bought a house. So we bought a house in the suburbs of Montreal where we have a yard for Stella.
Probably the only people specifically looking for a house for its yarn dyeing capability.
Yeah.
Set up.
You'd be with the real estate agent, you'd be like, "This is a really sweet house for a young couple," and we'd be like, "Well, where do you dye the yarn? Where's the yarn room?"
Our selling point for this house was that right now the room that we're in is a converted garage that was set up as a family room, and while it was being shown to us by the agent, we were both like marveling at its capabilities. That's a TFA office headquarters rather than a family room.
This is where we keep the yarn.
Which is exactly what we did, yeah.
So it actually works out super. We'll do a studio tour, I think, hopefully at some point. But
that would be a good one. Yeah, we could walk people through.
And but for today, I'll just sort of explain it. So like Chris said, it was a garage addition. So it's off the side of the house, and there is this direction where I'm pointing. Is a small garage, too small to park a car, but plenty of space to stack tons and tons of boxes of undyed yarn. And then you come through the door from the pseudo garage into the TFA office, which is where we store all of the dyed yarn, where we do all the shipping, where the computers are, that sort of thing. And then you go out the back door of the office into our backyard, where we have built our dye studio. So the dye studio we built in I think it was maybe 2012.
Yeah.
Maybe 2011. I don't know.
I think fall of 2012.
Because when we moved in, we dyed all the yarn in the basement in the laundry room, which was better than the kitchen.
It wasn't much better than the apartment.
No.
The only thing is it didn't interfere with the food, but if you went grocery shopping or out for a bit and came home, any time of day, it smelled like wet sheep in here.
Yeah. Having dyeing in the house, the amounts of yarn that we were dyeing, I felt like sometimes it was a little bit. Yeah, I was embarrassed when people would come over.
You wouldn't even think of it until someone did.
And they'd come over and they'd be like, "Whoa,
what is that?
Whoa, you guys, your house smells like sheep."
Right.
And we'd be like, "Oh, yeah." I mean,
also by this point, it was me doing the dyeing, and the ceilings in the basement were definitely under 6 feet. So it was.
Chris is 6'3".
So it was like 8 or 9 hours a day of stooping, and we just had boards set up in the laundry room on top of the washer dryer.
Yeah.
So it was again a situation that you had to move everything to do your, to do laundry and access it.
I think like it worked.
We made it work for almost 2 years.
You can make it work, but it was just clearly not like ideal.
Yeah.
So now Chris has his own little studio in the backyard. It's not huge. The studio is 10 by 14 for anybody who sort of like wants to get a visual on that, which is big for like a shed. But it's not a huge space, just to say. It has 2 sinks.
Relatively speaking, it's paradise.
Yeah.
It's got high ceilings, ventilation.
Yeah,
you can open the windows. You can open the doors.
We're both looking at it now lovingly as we're talking about it. It was a game changer for sure. Getting the dyeing out of the house has proper ventilation. I mean, it was really a big deal. So, but then I guess we should backtrack a little bit to how it became that Chris was the one doing the dyeing.
Right. So that started in our apartment upstairs.
Yeah, I guess that basically I was doing all the dyeing, and I think we sort of thought that initially, for sure, I thought that was like I was the artist and like nobody else could do that. But it became evident pretty quickly that there were so many other aspects of the business that Chris wasn't wasn't capable, that Chris couldn't handle. Sort of like the emails from customers asking specific knitting questions about gauge or about fiber or pattern recommendations, color recommendations. Chris just wasn't comfortable dealing with that. Customer service obviously is a very big part of owning a small business. So I had to do all of that stuff. And then just like all the online stuff. I mean, there's just, I'm not going to go into all the details of everything that I do. But basically, the one thing that I didn't need to be doing was the dyeing.
Right.
Because if I could teach somebody, aka Chris, to dye all of our colors, then I could just do everything else involved in managing the business, and the yarn would just like appear. The yarn would just be there. And I mean, I can't even believe how well it worked out.
Yeah, it's amazing because when we started, I wasn't even really a huge fan of color.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't wear any color.
No.
I only wore shades.
Chris is wearing this beautiful Robin's Egg Blue shirt today.
That's a departure.
I think it's like a month old. Like, it's a brand new shirt, and I feel like it's the first colorful shirt you own.
Yeah, other than
like
some t-shirts, but it's
maybe a light blue check in like a shirt.
Yeah, it's
some t-shirts. You maybe have like one red t-shirt. Anyhow,
it's pretty recent, and I owe it all to
gray.
You. I wouldn't have done it without you. So
yay!
Yeah, but now I'm
rainbow in your world.
Tan, by teaching me to dye, gave me a real appreciation for colors and how they work together.
Oh, love it!
And helped me find that it's something I really love.
Yeah, shockingly, I mean, just you wouldn't know this unless you tried, but Chris is a natural yarn dyer. Like, you're such a good dyer. I can't believe it. I think he's a much better dyer than I was. I think because he's more patient, he's more like deliberate and considerate when he's dyeing, whereas when I was doing the bulk of the dyeing, I found it's very heavy, it's very burdensome, like it's very labor intensive.
It wasn't dissimilar to the kitchen work. That's why it was a very smooth transition.
Right.
You know, it's still
you were definitely
pots of steaming water and moving heavy things around.
Good point.
Yeah, it feels
Whereas, I was finding I was just getting definitely worn out by the physical aspect of doing so much every day. Like, I love going out there and just still having fun experimenting, doing a little bit, but having to do it, like Chris dyes a full work week. He dyes Monday to Friday, all day, and
before kids, it would often be weekends as well.
Yeah, we were a lot more.
We've got it under control now to not have it take over everyone's lives 7 days a week, but I think, it's definitely still a full-time thing. And we discovered that pretty early on, that you can't really switch back and forth. I couldn't jump in and start doing the stuff that you do while you're dyeing. You know, it's easier to keep track of.
I think it works quite well that we have separate jobs. We know that's another thing. People often ask us, how do you work with your spouse? Don't you get tired of spending all day every day together? First of all, no, because we're deeply in love.
Right. Right.
But we also do very different things, like, and particularly now since Chris is out in the studio, he's not physically, I mean, he's in the house when he comes in to grab a cup of coffee, so we say hi, we eat lunch together, but we don't spend all day, every day, sitting in the same room, just staring at each other, bickering. Like,
I don't work from home, it's just a really short commute.
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
Yeah, for sure. And so it works out super well for us that way, and so that's the way that things are now. For a couple of years now, we've had that studio. You've been doing all the dyeing, and I've been doing everything else, and that it works out super, super well for us. And so in terms of the business progression, how that's changed, I mentioned the LYSs before we got into a couple shops, and that was super exciting, and we loved doing that for a time until we had Rowan.
Yeah.
Rowan's almost 4, and so we were completely unprepared, I think, as most first-time parents are, with the reality of how much work a baby is.
We both had visions of him in a bassinet, just watching us work.
I was like, I'll just set up a bouncy chair in the office, and I'll just go about my life as usual. And he was... he wasn't
that type of baby anyway,
no,
but I don't think any kid...
he was a colicky baby, and he... oh my goodness, it was a real challenge, and so it became evident very quickly that, like, we could not keep it up.
No.
We couldn't do what we were doing. And we were miserable. I felt like I was a bad mother because I wasn't giving Rowan the attention because I was so stressed about work. And so anyhow, something had to give, and so thankfully we
By the time we
finally
had Micah, we were prepared for
when we had our second
the
son,
slowdown
Micah,
that you
we
need
knew
to do.
I think we took a significant amount of time off in the summer.
We did, yeah.
And I was, every step of the way, you're a little bit nervous. Like, I was a little bit nervous, okay, if we shut down for a month because like, it's not just that I can take time off and Chris will continue working, because somebody needs to ship everything that Chris does. And I needed Chris, like, you know, anyhow. So it was quite, it's scary to take time off because you worry that,
you're wondering
like,
if everyone's going to be there when you get back.
but thankfully, knitters are, I say this to everybody if it comes up, people who ask, knitters are the best people in the world to work for,
Yeah.
because they are, particularly when it comes to babies.
Yeah, they understand.
They love babies.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love babies? But knitters love babies. And so I remember I answered a few emails, literally like the day after Micah was born, I think, and I got like 3 responses from people being like, "Do not answer my email. Like, what are you doing? Like, you just had a baby. Yeah, get out." And I was like, "Oh, you guys, too much." But anyhow, knitters are the best. They were, you guys were all super understanding when we had to cut back in it, and that's just like, it was incredibly helpful, rewarding. But so anyhow, in terms of the business, that meant that we did have to cut back. We couldn't continue to do the amount of wholesale selling to the LYSs that we were doing, and the website direct to retail customers that we were doing. And we were trying to do, one of the things that we love doing the most is the Etsy updates, right?
They're really exciting.
We do new colors, we do one-of-a-kind colors. It's just full-on experimentation. It's the best part of, it's why we do what we do, I would say. It's what is the most rewarding of, you know, back to the roots, like, where I was just so excited about yarn and color, and I wanted to just experiment and get out there and try new things and try new colors. And every single update, we have new colors, different things. Like, you think you've done every single blue you can do. No.
I think we both feel that it's really important to be able to have consistent colorways people can rely on and come back for, but just as important to keep it exciting and show them new stuff.
I think it's exciting for the customers, but also exciting for us.
Oh, big time. It makes your day a lot more fun.
That's what we were really struggling with a few years ago, before we made this cutback and then decided to make the switch to be selling exclusively online to our customers, is that I think we went, I'm going to say, close to a year without doing an Etsy update, because there was just no time for experimentation. There was no time to be creative, no time to play around in the studio, because we were always just like trying to slam out orders, and we were sort of like, what are we, like, we're supposed to be fun, creative, small business owners, and it's like we've created this factory that we are now working in, and it was just we were losing some passion, right? Like,
I think several times you get to a crossroads where you're at your limit and you have to decide whether you're going to move it out of the house, make it a bigger thing with a fuller staff, or keep it small. And every time we've opted to keep it small, and it's because of the creativity and the experimentation and what you can do by keeping it small, and the freedom you can retain by doing that. So that's
always
kind of
a tough decision, because
a lot has changed since we started, and then a lot has stayed the same.
Yeah,
it's pretty similar to how it's been since we both joined, or both started doing it full time.
Yeah.
I think one more thing we wanted to try was, we had some questions prepared for each other, right?
Okay, so I feel like we've shared our journey. That's the story of TFA. Hopefully we've covered most of it, and if there's any questions, obviously you can leave them in the comments and we can answer them in our next podcast.
Sure.
But so that's where we are now, and we're going to do a little rapid fire question and answer thing between Chris and I, so you guys can sort of, I don't know.
Tan wrote a couple, I wrote a couple, and we don't know what we're asking each other. Mine are pretty easy. I hope she hasn't hit you with anything too crazy.
Mine are hardcore investigative journalism. Okay, you want to go first? Or
I'll go first,
okay.
Start with a nice soft one. What is your favorite speckle colorway?
Ooh, the speckles. I'm going to go with Grassroots.
Grassroots?
Yeah, so we have one here. Grassroots. This is in our tonight. Well, by the time this airs, it won't be tonight.
Oh,
It'll be over. I don't know how to upload it to YouTube.
Hope you guys got some on the update.
Well, but we can reproduce this one, so I'm sure there'll be more. But it's like the most beautiful green with some blues and golds and gray and brown. It's just like the most beautiful green speckled yarn I've
I
ever
would have
seen.
put money on her saying hummingbird or another blue, but
Yeah.
I'm impressed by that answer. Okay, next
I
question.
have, because you know why? Well, not why, but I'm focusing on greens right now because we went to a St. Patrick's Day parade, and I'm like looking at my closet. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wear. I have
Lacking in
I have
green.
no green. I don't have green. Obviously, well, I have no green.
Yeah.
I have literally no green. I didn't wear anything green to St. Patrick's Day because I'm a real Debbie Downer.
Okay, next question. Do you let Rowan pick his own colors for knit projects, or do you
No.
intervene and sway his decision?
I sway. He.
Thank you for your honesty.
He will come into the office and I like pretend like I'm letting him pick, but then he'll pick a couple great colors and then he'll just mix them.
Throw in
He
a
just
curveball.
wants, he always wants multicolored projects, and his color pairing sense isn't quite there yet.
Favorite colors right now? Pink, and his new one,
Gold. Golden
Pink
diamonds.
and gold. Golden diamonds.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
Which I like.
We should
We
let
can
him
do
name the
that.
colorways.
Yeah.
Okay, last one.
Yes.
Who is a more natural knitter?
Ooh.
You or myself? I'm not talking skill levels, I'm talking first project, from the get-go.
Okay.
Who had a more...
You're setting me up. You.
Thank
You're an amazing
Thank you.
knitter. The first project that Chris ever knit was just a garter stitch scarf, and I think that I was helping a little bit. I jumped in and I knit a few rows, and you can't see what you can if you're looking at the scarf now. First of all, he finished it. It's like a man-sized perfect garter stitch scarf. It's a perfect rectangle. You cannot tell what parts I knit, what parts he knit. His tension, his gauge is amazing. It's just
Whereas
he's a gift.
Tan's first scarf, which I've seen as well, is much smaller.
I was 6.
Okay, look, we weren't going to bring age into it. I might have been in my 30s. You might have been
30.
6, but
Yeah.
scarf to scarf,
Scarf
project
to scarf.
comparison.
No, scarf to scarf. Yours is
I'm
better.
what they call a natural. Those are my
Oh my
questions.
god. Okay. Well, nice, Chris. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You beat a 6-year-old.
Thank you.
What is your favorite color to dye?
My favorite color to dye, right now I'd have to say it's Cosmic Night.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Thought you were gonna say something.
It's labor intensive but really satisfying.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I love the way
Love
it comes out.
How do you feel when you step out into your studio? When you walk in, one word, what do you feel in your studio?
Oh, calm.
Oh.
Yeah, definitely calm. So most mornings here,
I know why.
yeah, Tan gets left to fend for herself with the boys, and they're
Yeah.
pretty rowdy in the morning.
Yeah.
And I get to just grab a big basket of yarn and go out there, open the windows, turn my music on.
The
and
kids aren't allowed in the studio. Well,
they
in
come by for little
general.
visits, but they can't be in there when the pots are
there's-
on.
It's,
So
it's not really a kid-friendly location.
yeah, so I have a little bit of a sanctuary back there. So definitely calm. Yeah.
Calm. Must be nice.
It is. It's
I wish
really
I
nice.
could relate.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know how that feels. Okay, last question. You ready?
Yeah.
What's going on with
Oh,
the hair?
Okay.
What's the plan?
It's a 5-year plan that doesn't involve cutting the hair or the
Ay,
beard.
ay, ay.
No, I don't know. I'm
I love it. I like the bun.
I figured I was just
Put
gonna
your head to the side, like, so that the people
gonna-
can see the glory.
take one last attempt at growing it out before it got too crazy, and then I'll settle down with a more conservative dad look.
No, you don't need a dad like that.
I don't really have to, do I?
No.
I work in the backyard. So.
yeah. It's just for me. Well, beauty. I love it.
All right. Well, there. Those questions weren't that tough.
Yeah.
And I
I'll have
think-
to work harder next time. How about something a bit more hard hitting?
So that's it. We did it. First episode.
Go
Nicely
Siege.
done.
Love you.
I love you too.
See you next time, friends.
Thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.